Good old boy network is still alive and well in the law enforcement community. I work with many, many law enforcement officers, and they will be the first to say, yep, that's absolutely true. We protect our own, because when you put your life on the line every day with people, you protect them. It's just reality. Law enforcement officers is number 2. Any other guesses? Anything else? Yeah, I need some more coffee. Clergy. Clergy, faith leaders, lay ministers, clergymen. Who has more authority than God? To most people, who has more authority than God? And there are all sorts of passages in the Bible, in the Scripture, in the Torah, in the Quran, whatever your holy book and holy faith tradition may be. There are multiple ways to twist that completely support domestic violence. Completely. And I cannot tell you the number of women who have walked into my door and said, well, I talked to my pastor, and he said if I was just a better Christian wife, or if I was just a better Jewish wife, or I was just a better insert faith here wife, I would endure, and this would stop. If I just pray harder, if I just am more submissive, I'll be okay. Who has more authority than God? Unfortunately, the establishment also tends to be a source of abuse in terms of authority. If I could tell you the number of women who have walked into my office and said, the judge said if I made one more criminal complaint against him that he would give him the kids because he's tired of me complaining. Well, last time I checked, if you're being knocked down a set of stairs, or you're being slapped around, or you're being insulted in front of your children, then you should actually file a criminal complaint because it's a criminal action. He told me DCS would take my kids. In Marion County and soon to be statewide, domestic violence is a removable offense for DCS now. That is a new policy that's going to be put into effect. I have my own issues with that, and we may talk about those. The stanchions of authority really do not support a survivor's attempt to break from the relationship. They do not support a survivor's, the process, and we'll talk about the process. Economic abuse. As I said, the fastest growing form of domestic violence, period. Because you can't go anywhere if you don't have access to resources. Economic abuse, it takes, identity theft is one of the fastest growing crimes. That is a huge piece of domestic violence. All it takes to completely ruin somebody's credit for the rest of their life, their mother's maiden name and their social security number. I've been with my husband for 2 weeks before I could recite both from memory. My husband doesn't like to talk to people. So, almost immediately, as you can see, I'm very comfortable talking to people. He'd say, honey, I need to do this. Can you call for me? Honey, I need to do this. Can you go do that for me? Now, once we were married, it was a lot easier. But they never questioned. I called, I rattled off his social security number, rattled off his mother's maiden name. Oh, they gave me his balances on his credit cards, when his bills were due, all of that. All of that. I could have completely trashed his life if I'd wanted to. That's all it takes. Now, more likely what we see is control of the funds that are coming in. And to give you an example of how pervasive this is, I worked with a woman who, in Indianapolis, was a sales rep for a highly visible and well-known pharmaceutical company. Doesn't really take a huge imagination to figure out which one. She was a sales rep pulling down 6 figures. She had a PhD. She was married to a gentleman who taught in the Indianapolis public school system. They make squat. The garbage men in Indianapolis are paid better than our public school teachers. So clearly, she's bringing home the bacon, she's frying it, she's serving it on the table. She is the breadwinner in the family. Now, I was working with her about 3 or 4 months. She was still living with her husband. She was really kind of torn about what to do with the relationship. And I was working with her during a session one day, and I just happened to mention that I had, at the time, my youngest son was about 8 or 9 months old, and I said, oh yeah, I've got to run to the store before I go home. I need some formula. I'm out of formula. She said, oh, where do you go? I said, well, I go to Walmart. I was shopping at Walmart at that point. And she said, oh, so you know, they raised the price 73 cents. I can tell you they lowered the price. I don't know if I can tell you exactly how much they raised or lowered the price, so that piqued my interest. I said, oh, you must have a memory for numbers. She said, oh, no, I did my pre-shopping last night. my pre-shopping. Just out of curiosity, what's your pre-shopping? She said, well, you know, I make my list, and I take my list, and I write down how much it's going to be, and I figure out what my bill's going to be so my husband can give me the grocery money. Did you lose your debit card? You lost the checkbook? No, no, no. This is how we always shop, because I have to bring him back the change. Okay. And I'm thinking about every time I have gone to the grocery store with my 2 kids in tow at the time my oldest was 5. And how many times I have magically ended up buying Oreos or Cocoa Crisp or an extra bottle of you know, Nestle's Quick, or, you know, somebody's screaming at the checkout stand because we didn't quite get there in time and they need a little snack, so I'll grab a fruit snack off of the aisle there because they have all the impulse buys there for the people with children who are screaming. And I'm thinking, how do you do that? So what happens if you have to buy anything extra? Oh, I'm not allowed. This was I've been working, like I said, with this woman for about 4 months. This was an entirely new dynamic that I had never thought about. This is a woman with a PhD who could very well walk out the door on her own, no problem, and have her own life and be a shining star. And yet she has to take her grocery bill home with her receipt and her change to her husband every week. And God forbid she have forgotten to put something on that list. That is economic abuse. Coercion and threats. Coercion and threats, the last one, as I said, most common threat that any woman, especially if there are children involved, I will kill myself, I will kill the kids, and I will leave you to deal with it. She has heard threats to her own life multiple times. So many times she probably doesn't even blink anymore when she hears it. It just doesn't faze her anymore. Any threat that he can make. Many, many times he will threaten himself because he knows she feels responsible, she blames herself, and she's going to feel like it's her job to fix it. Straight up, straightforward. So, that being said, what is it that causes him to be this way? What causes domestic violence? What are the reasons behind it? First and foremost, and if you understand only one piece of this, if you remember only one piece of it, domestic violence is a choice. Violent behavior is always a choice. Period. We choose to react in a violent way to something. Whatever we may blame for that choice, we react in a violent way. It is a behavioral choice. No one in this world is born any more or less violent than others. No one in this world has really any excuse other than they choose to be violent. And in this case, the violent behavior has a goal, and that is to gain and maintain power and control. It is a learned behavior. We know that kids who grow up in these homes with domestic violence, are about 75% more likely to either become abusers or survivors themselves. And unfortunately, the phenomenon that we're seeing right now is what you would think that role is switching. The girls are growing up to be abusers, the boys are growing up to be survivors. The girls are growing up in an environment where they are watching the power being taken from their mother time and time and time again. They are watching this dynamic where their mother is weak, they blame her for what's going on, they hear the abuser blame her for what's going on, and so I'm going to take that power before it can be